Hello and welcome to Franchises for Fathers. I'm Brett Ethridge, co-founder of Franchises for Fathers, joined today by Dan Hernandez of Turquoise Wine Bar. Dan, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
I'm glad to have you on, and I'm excited to learn a little bit more about your path to business ownership, learn about Turquoise Wine Bar, why you chose the franchise route as an MBA, and some of your corporate background as well, and how you got to this point. So let's just go ahead and dive in. Tell me a little bit to start about your educational background, right? You went to business school, and I'm curious how you go from business school to where you are today. What was your thought process going into business school in terms of what you thought you wanted to do?
Okay, so at the company that I worked for before, I kind of worked my way up through management, and the organization was going through a lot of changes. We were a quasi-state agency. We were in the process of becoming a privatized company. So the state of Arizona was moving. They were basically giving us our freedom. It is a mutual insurance company, so everything we were basically funded ourselves through insurance premiums. And the company was looking at the leadership at the time, and I was moving up through the ranks, and they were looking at leadership, and they said, "Hey, we're going to start promoting ourselves. We want to show that we have our staff is highly educated, so we're going to open up, higher education to all our executives, whoever's interested." So I quickly raised my hand, and I was one of the first that went through an MBA program. So at the time, I think we had one person that had the MBA. After when I left, I think our entire executive staff had all gone through some executive program. So my thought process of it was twofold. One, it was a good way for me to continue to move up through the organization. And two, I thought I could really help me bring something back to the business that I could implement. And it did work out for me. I mean, I was able to move up through the ranks, and a lot of the work that I was doing, it really helped the company move forward, and it really helped us develop. By the time I left, we were moving into other states. We had this multi-state strategy. We were bringing in new talent. We were upgrading our IT infrastructure. I mean, there was a lot of things going on by the time I left. And so I really felt that it helped me out. That was kind of my strategy.
So the MBA was a launching point to help you advance in the company that you were in, very much though on the corporate track. Did you ever have sort of an entrepreneurial mindset? Like when you were a kid, did you ever think about being a business owner?
I never thought about being a business owner when I was a kid. Looking back now, there was a lot of things that we used to do to raise money. I had three brothers, and we were always coming up with creative things to do. But I guess in that structure, the structure that I've always been in is I was always kind of the leader of it. So I didn't bear the brunt of all doing all the work, right? So it never felt like we were entrepreneurs because I was always saying, "Hey, let's do this." I'm like, "Okay, we'll do that." And so they were doing all the work. In corporate life, it was the same way. I had a lot of infrastructure underneath me. So when we were making decisions, I was flipping switches, but everybody else was doing the work. And so that's one of the things that I found going into entrepreneurship is that you're it, right? You're doing a lot of the work that people used to do for me, which was a big change for me. I really liked the corporate structure. I liked that a lot of things were just ready to go, whether it was your IT infrastructure, it was your HR infrastructure, it was all the operations, everything was always ready to go. You're just going in there and leveraging those areas to help you get to where you want to be from a business standpoint. As an entrepreneur, we're all those levers now, and so I think that's one of the biggest differences that I see that I even told my wife Laura, I was like, "Hey, she's an entrepreneur. She from day one, she's like always looking for that next venture." And I was more steady state. I like the security, I like the benefits, I like the pay. I don't like too much change. And so we were exact opposites, but I always provided her that stability. And for me, I love that comfort, right? Looking back now, I don't think I would ever go back. So it's just a different mindset, a different time. Now I'm more of that entrepreneurial person. We're always thinking about, okay, what can we do different? How do we make this better? What changes can we make? I think from a business standpoint, the one thing that I do see between corporate and what I'm doing now is that it's true what people say that you're driving this big ship, and if you want to move the needle, it takes a long time for you to really see those changes. In our business now, we tweak the needle a little bit and change is immediate, and we're a lot more agile. We always talked about being agile in business, and I always thought we were pretty agile for my team, but now we're really agile, and it's really have to experience the difference to really understand, what that means.
So I'm curious to get your take on this, though, right? Because I think when a lot of people go to business school, there's this sort of interplay between the soft skills that you learn in business school and the hard skills. And a lot of people feel like I'm going to go learn a lot of hard skills, the finance and the accounting and the things that are going to help me get ahead. And in your case, your employer wanted the executives to be more educated, but it sounds like some of what you learned did translate well and help you guys grow the company and all of that. But I'm curious, as you now think about business owners and the role that you play and the things that it takes to be successful growing Turquoise Wine Bar, were there hard skills you learned that you still draw on from business school? Or was it more of the soft skills? Or is there really anything from your MBA that you are pulling on now as you're growing Turquoise Wine Bar?
I'm actually, it's pretty balanced. I'm pulling from everything that I learned. So, it's a lot of the leadership, the strategic thinking, it's adaptability, my communication skills, a lot of EI. I'm working with two business partners that, they're very strong in their opinions and their thoughts, and I have to figure out how to balance myself with them, and then how to work within that team. It's definitely given me a more holistic understanding of business overall. And when I was before my MBA, I had all these tools that I was using naturally. And then once I was done with my MBA, I actually had a better understanding of those tools and how to really utilize those tools and how to reflect on the use of those tools. So, when I'm looking at numbers, I could look at numbers before, and I used a lot of intuition with those numbers. I was basically relying on my experience, right? After the MBA, I relied less on my experience, and I only went with gut when there was not a clear answer, a clear definitive answer on the numbers, what the numbers are telling me. Now we rely a lot on the numbers to point us in a direction, and then we build strategies around those numbers to help us get there, right? So like what I tell the group all the time, it's like, it's a great, this is a great idea. Let's not figure out all the ways not to do it. Let's figure out the ways how to do it, and then what are those strategies that we're going to build around that to get us there, right? And so I find that I've brought a lot of those. I brought a lot of my work experience. You can't, you always have to account for that. But I also brought a lot of the decision making, the things that I learned in my MBA to the business too, to just make it a better fit overall for running. And almost feels sometimes like you really appreciate what you've done in an MBA in small business now, because it just feels like there's so much more that I know that if I had just started right out of college, starting my own business, it would have been a steep learning curve. Coming in now, it's really helped us out because we have a lot of strategy sessions, and we'll talk through things, and we'll bring up numbers, and we'll try to figure out what the numbers are saying to us. And then when we're dealing with our team, we're trying to figure out, well, okay, we're trying to drive our team to sell. How are we going to get them to sell? And how do we still tend to their needs? So EI becomes really important in terms of how we're working with our employees, because in our business, we can't afford to pay people a lot. So we have to find ways to keep them motivated. We have to kind of find ways to create that with them for them, because if they don't know what's in it for them, then you're always going to be turning it. And we have really low turn in our shop. So yeah, I think it's a combination of the two.
Yeah. Why franchising? So you have this corporate background, you went to business school, you had this shift of thinking to go more the entrepreneurial route. Why franchising? What does franchising bring to the table? And for an MBA watching this, or somebody currently grinding in corporate America who might be thinking, you know what, having a little bit of agency, starting my own business, being in business for myself makes a lot of sense. What is the appeal to you and potentially to the others for the franchise model?
So when we first started the business, we brought our experience and we started building out these systems within our business that was So it was really interesting. The three of us kind of complement each other. So Jan has a really strong marketing side. Laura has a really strong sense of business. She has a lot of experience with finance. And then I bring a lot of the operations. And so we started building out systems for ourselves to make it easy for customers to understand and make it easy for us to run our business. And as we started, we always wanted to grow bigger. And as we started going through the different ways, I always would tell the group, let's use other people's money. Let's not always finance ourselves, right? And so but our first location, we did finance ourselves. And when we were looking at second locations or third locations, we're like, we didn't want to give up the ownership. We don't want to figure out like, there's trade-offs with using other people's monies. One, you have to make enough money to pay those bills every month. And so as we started getting into the operation, we're like, wow, we've really created something that other people could do. We wanted to continue to build our brand. And when we started looking at franchising, it really gave us the opportunity to do the work that we want to do in building our brand, to continue to produce a product that people want. They want a sense of community and share with others what we found in our own business. And so that's, we all took steps away from the business. We were all being really successful in our careers and we could have continued growing those careers, but we stepped out of it and stepped into this. And and the fulfillment part of it has been really high for all three of us. And so I think looking back now when we were trying to figure out, well, let's share this with other people that want to go into business. And then when you start doing the numbers on franchising, if you're a franchisor, you can make pretty decent money just taking that route. It's coaching and mentoring people from a different level, right? But you're not doing all the same work. You're not grinding it in and out like you are when you're running your own business. You're basically growing the business through others, and that becomes the new scenario, right? Is how to get other people to continue to promote the values and live within the structures that you've built. That becomes the process now versus coming in every day, turning on the lights, doing counts, serving customers. It changes the model. So we were on a flight, and my wife Laura was like, well, let's really do this, and she started writing it. We were going. So our business it's a wine bar. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
a
what I was
wine
going to ask
shop.
you to explain your business because you are still running a location though, right?
We are
Yourselves.
still running a
Yeah. So
location.
tell us about Turquoise Wine Bar.
Yeah. So Turquoise Wine Bar, it's a wine bar, tasting room, and bottle shop. And when we first started it, I felt it was really important to have multiple revenue streams. And my thought process was that if one revenue stream is down, hopefully the other revenue streams will pick you up or keep you going, or one will really take off. And that's kind of what we've been seeing. So like Wine Club is a big part of our revenue stream. It's consistent. You're getting a money flow every month. You're getting the same amount. You have to give up a little bit, but it's worth it. Then we have our regular shop operations. We have people coming in, buying food, drinking wine, taking a bottle home. That's our whole, the motto is really come in, have a flight. So we have tasting flights, have a glass, have some food, take a bottle home. That's in a nutshell. In our business, what we kind of built it up from the ground up, and so people can come in, they taste the wines in flights. They can drink the wines in glass. They can take a bottle home. We have food. The food really is not. So I have a little bit of experience in food, and when you get to become a restaurant, it really kills your margins. So we try to stay underneath that. We're not a restaurant. We don't have grease. We don't have like grease fryers. We don't have big giant ovens. We produce all our food with fridge, freezer, microwave, and oven. A little convection oven, countertop oven, and so it keeps our food costs really down. A lot of it is semi-prepped, and we do some prep work but produce some pretty good menus. So it's a wine shop. People get to experience it. We started wine travel, so we're doing a lot of wine travel now. We have winery partners that we're working with, and they're giving perks to our wine club members. So if you're one of our wine club members and you go to Napa, you can meet with some of our wine partners and they might give them like a free tasting and a 10% discount. And our wine club travels with us. We went to France our first year, Italy this year. We're going to Switzerland. We're going to go down the Rhine next year. And then the year after that, my business partner and I are actually hosting the boat and we're going to go down to Bordeaux. So it's a lot of different things where we have these revenue streams that are all working. It does take some work to build those out, but all of this is something that we built into a package that we can franchise.
And
We're
what I like
pushing the
about it,
business.
It's all of that, but it's also community. It's building community
Yes.
in your local area, and people, especially in today's world, want more of that.
Yeah. So one of our things, no TVs. In fact, we just had an event yesterday. So um, what I told the group is I wanted to have a meeting where we just invited club members to come in. So we call it Sunday Social, and we just kicked it off yesterday. And we had about 20 members come in yesterday, and that was the first time. But it was people that did not know each other. So they come in as strangers, leave as friends, right? And so they came in, and everybody's talking to each other. I mean, it was a good. I think the majority of the people were there probably 4 hours. They were there when
Nice.
we opened, and still there when we closed. And but they make connections and then they become friends, and they have something in common, which is wine, and they'll come and tell us these stories like, hey, I didn't know these people, but now through you guys, we go out to dinner, we're going to parties, we're doing all these things. So it is a piece of our society that's kind of a little bit broken right now, where
It
people don't
is.
have a sense of community. We don't have those systems in place like we used to, and that's what we're trying to leverage that. That's part of our strategy, is trying to work on that, and it works. People are when you hear stories, that it just really makes you feel like what you're doing is good. And it's all around wine. Wine, it's not like a drunk fest, because wine, you don't drink fast, and but every bottle has a story, and you get to share those stories with people. So
I love it. And if you're watching this and you're intrigued with this concept as a business that you could envision yourself running, click the links in the information below, and we'll see if you qualify. Right? There's a process to be awarded a territory, and so we can have that conversation. But let's switch gears and go back to thinking about MBAs, maybe somebody in business school right now. Because really one of the hot concentrations in business school right now is sort of the entrepreneurial track. I think a lot of people go to business school thinking they actually do want to be in business for themselves, and a lot of them are kind of go the traditional startup route. You have an idea, or you incubate some ideas, and you're trying to create partnerships, and you're just trying to launch something. And that's absolutely the right path for certain people. But I think there's a subset of people in business school that franchising would be perfect for. And so if you were going to talk to somebody sitting in a business school classroom right now, thinking they're on the entrepreneurial track, like, who is franchising for? And who might be better served going the traditional DIY startup route?
I think franchising is for those people who, well, it's interesting, because when we started our concept, I think we hit some right notes. From the day that we opened our door, we were profitable, and we had our return. Our return on investment was actually, by the end of the year, which was like 6 months, the end of that year, we already had our return back. So we were pretty profitable in our business, and it's been that way ever since. But we are realistic, and we know that that's not going to be for every franchisee, right? And so we're telling them, plan for 90 days before you start to even show, profitability. And I think someone that has a really good concept, is really organized. It's a lot of systems that we're still doing a lot of learning. So there's a lot of all your stuff has to be documented. Your processes have to be, we're still testing a lot of our processes now. We thought it was a good process. And then once it gets tested by a franchisee, you get feedback. You're like, oh, we got to make this adjustment, right? And so you have to
That's
be
one of the
willing to,
advantages, right? I mean, you're talking about
right?
90 days to profitability. It could be years in the case of a lot of startups. And I think, yeah, at least from my perspective, what I hear you saying is that's one of the values of going a franchise route is you have a partner, you have somebody who's gone ahead of you, who has created something that is working, that has systems in place that are working. And then if something's not working or the industry changes, you're not left to figure it out all yourself because you have that partner.
Yeah, if your concept's not fleshed out, and it really is like a true startup, you might be better off going down that path of developing it completely, and then coming back and saying, can this scale? Can it scale? There's a lot of things to take into account. Like with our shop, we're still trying to figure out, like, what, when Blockbuster used to be around, there was
Oh,
like
yeah,
one on every corner.
that's right.
We're trying to figure out what our corner is, right? How big is our corner?
And then from the franchisee standpoint, Do you have any sort of parting thoughts or ideas? So somebody who is looking at a franchise business as an avenue to get into business for themselves, what's the potential? What have you seen running a location yourself? What have you seen with some of your other franchisees? What are the upside benefits? Is it a viable path to financial freedom, for example, to a rewarding career where you're making a difference in the community? Like, from your perspective, why would somebody choose to go the franchise route? In other words, invest in a business, build a business instead of going the corporate route, for example, or again, starting their own thing? What are some of the benefits that you see for a franchisee?
I think the benefits for a franchisee is that you're basically everything you do, how much you put into the business, how much you don't put into the business, you're responsible for, and there's no one to answer to, right? And when you buy a franchise, you're basically everything's coming in a box for you, so you're not having to figure things out. You're figuring out how to implement, how to refine it, how to do all the things to run the business. You're not having to figure out the infrastructure of the business, right? Somebody's already done that for you, and then they're there to support you with that. In the company, you make X amount of money, right? But so much of that money that you're also contributing, like saying you're in a sales job, you're going there and you make $3 million, what you have to show for is whatever they give you in salary and whatever they give you in bonus. So the company's taking their share, their fair share of what you're bringing to the table. Running your own business, in your own business, pretty much everything you bring to the table is what you take home. And so making a difference in people's life, it's pretty immediate. People tell you stories. People tell you how satisfied or not satisfied they are. When they're not satisfied, at least you know where you stand and you can make course correct, right? In a big location, the process was some customers dissatisfied, and it's your fault that that customer is dissatisfied. How are you going to fix it? Right, that becomes more of the challenge, right? Or versus like, hey, I'm really sorry this happened, but thank you for giving me this information. You fix it and you move on. But it's just different how the two types of business operations function. And you, for me, running our own business and then moving to franchise, there's a lot more satisfaction. I feel like there's a lot more control. There's a lot more, rewards and benefits that we're getting from this, and you know where you stand with your customers. And so I think I know where my money goes. I mean, there's so much more going on when you do this. As a, I think if you're a franchisee, you want to look at the franchise that you're looking at and see what are their systems, what kind of support do they give you, how much money do I have to invest? What does the FDD look like, and going through that, make sure you understand what they're telling you. How much do I have to pay in for marketing? All those questions that are in there, you want to make sure you're thoroughly look at them, and then look for ratings. Like, what are people saying about this business? Not just from the franchisor standpoint, but what are customers on you know in the field actually saying? Right? Are they satisfied with the brand? Did they like the product? It's one thing to buy. We get a lot of people that are investors, and they come in and they'll ask us that question: How many have you opened? Right? And what do I have to do to, how much money do I have to put down? And those guys they're purely looking at for investment, but now you're asking yourself as a franchisor, do I really want to sell my product to this person? Because they're not looking at it the way I'm looking at it. It's not something that's very emotional for you, and they're just looking at it as a pure investment. And what happens? You start to dilute your brand, and you definitely don't want to do that, right? And so as a franchisee, you want to make sure you're looking at not just what's in front of you, but the bigger picture. What's the brand doing out in the field, and how successful is it out there? You might have great terms. They might tell you, oh, this is only $20,000 initial investment, and you get this, right. You want to look at that, because sometimes the lower cost of entry means there's going to be more people entering that market. It's kind of like some of these franchises. There's a ton out there, but it gets so saturated because it's a lower cost of entry. And so I think those are the things you have to take a look at.
Yeah. I mean, you really want to connect with the business that you're investing in and pouring blood, sweat, and tears into, so to speak. It's still a business, right? Franchises, I always say, like you suggested, sort of like business in a box. A lot is taken care of for you, which is the value of the franchise brand and the systems and the operations. but it's still your business and you're still driving it and you're still growing it. And so you just want to make sure you're aligned with their mission. Like you said, you're emotionally invested in it. And that's where fit matters. And for some of you watching this, Turquoise Wine Bar is going to be a perfect fit. For others of you, it might be a different type of a concept in an entirely different type of industry. That's the role that I play as a franchise consultant, is helping you find that good fit and do some of the due diligence that Dan was talking about. So I appreciate your time, Dan. I've enjoyed learning more about your journey to this point. Congratulations on your success and your growth. Do you have any parting thoughts for somebody maybe considering franchise ownership for the first time? Maybe somebody considering Turquoise Wine Bar, maybe again, somebody considering business ownership versus business school. Any final thoughts for somebody interested in changing their own life through business ownership and wondering the best path to make that happen?
Yeah, I think my thing is like I was afraid to take that first step, but then I took that step and now it's changed my life, right? And so sometimes that's what it takes. It's just moving forward. You know, my prior to this, I was always taking this I was always looking for the safe path. And you know, I was very happy, but now it's kind of like it's fulfilled. I have a lot more fulfillment. Don't be afraid to take that first step because you don't know what's in front of you until you've done that. And I don't know. I think we learn from we just learn through experience, and I think that you can't learn if you don't experience. So don't be afraid to take that first step.
Well said. So we'll leave it there. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation with Dan Hernandez of Turquoise Wine Bar. Thank you again for your time. Lots of contact information, and like I suggested, links below to learn more about Turquoise Wine Bar. For now, I'm signing off. Brett Ethridge with Franchises for Fathers. Take care, everyone.